Nice.
And we're live on YouTube.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Thanks, everyone, for joining. I just got the alert that we are live. Today is November 5th, and this is another edition of the OpenJS Foundation Cross-Project Council Weekly Meeting. Thanks again for everyone joining. Please add yourselves to the minute stock, and the more folks we can get helping take notes, the better. So please join in if you can. Before we get into things, do we have any announcements?
Couple of things. We should definitely be encouraging everyone from the project community to register to attend Node+JS Interactive, and also to submit sessions for the Collab Summit. We're just maybe 5-6 weeks away from the event, and it's going to be really awesome. We want to see as many people as possible there in Montreal, not only because it's awesome, but also because it'll help keep us all warm if we can huddle together. So please tell your friends and come to the conference.
Sounds good, thanks.
The other thing I want to share is that per our conversation, the onboarding issues, which were quite filling up our CPC issues list, have all been moved to the new project onboarding repository. So if you happen to be going to navigate to look for your project onboarding issue, that's now in the project onboarding repository and not in the CPC repository.
Thank you. Joy, did you do that this morning? I feel like I was just looking at it. And thank you.
Yes, yeah.
And I'll add too, you know, as we were talking earlier before we went live, is that I created a cross-project council agenda label in that repository, and it should be that if you apply it in that repo, it'll still pick up in the cross-project council's agenda. So feel free to use that label there, and we can cross-reference repos in our meetings. Excellent. Any other announcements or stuff from the board or anything that we want to share before we get into the agenda? Board or foundation or anything? No? Great.
Oh, one more thing, sorry.
Yep.
We are doing a AMA for the Node ComCom tomorrow morning for social. So if you want to support your colleagues on ComCom or just encourage people to participate in the AMA, that's tomorrow morning.
Great. You know what time?
Yes, 10 a.m. Eastern.
All right, great, thank you. Cool, so let's get into the issues here, or the agendas as they were. The first one, agenda items, is issue 390. I opened this up a few days ago based on some discussions with Jory, actually, about things that we may want to have at the Collab Summit in Montreal at Node.js Interactive, Node+JS. I was thinking that we could, you know, try to just have a slot for the cross-project council, and we could either break out into corners of the room for different areas that you know, we may want to focus on, or wondering if we should have separate sessions on different topics here. The things I have listed are transition process and support for emeritus projects, something that Jory had voiced, standards working group, infrastructure, and overall like project progression, acceptance, rejection, silent process, onboarding, offboarding, those sorts of things. If we were all together, we could kind of hash out some of these things in person. Does anybody have any thoughts?
My first thought is these are all good, sort of the very specific things to work on together. The other thing I thought we might want to have scheduled some time for is like the blue sky thinking or whatever. You know, we've got the a good start on getting the application process and all that running. Should we now start thinking about other things that we think we want the CPC and the foundation to champion in terms of pushing forward? Are there other working groups we think we should be spinning up, or other, things that we could start thinking about?
Mhm.
I love blue sky. Let's have a blue sky, pie in the sky. The answer is yes conversation.
Mhm. Good suggestion. I actually dropped it in the issue here, as well as the minutes. Do we think that these should be separate Collab Summit submissions, or should we just try to block out a little time and, we can work on these in that time slot together?
How long do we have? Like, how big, do you know offhand how big each session is?
I don't actually. Is anyone else on the call?
I do not.
I'd have to try to look it up real quickly.
I guess the other thing to think about is, do we want working sessions, or do we want to have a session such that, new people could join and we'd be kind of marketing to them that they should get involved, or because that might reflect whether we want one or two, or the flow, that kind of stuff.
I'm not finding information on session length and such.
Okay, I think they've typically been maybe an hour or maybe possibly longer, but I'm just looking at some of this. Sorry, go ahead.
They were an hour in Berlin,
Okay.
but I don't know if that's their intention this time.
I'm just looking at project progression. We could probably easily spend an hour walking through what we've got and figuring out where we've got gaps or things to work on.
Mm-hmm.
Another topic I'd like to bring up, I don't know yet if I will make it to Montreal, would be sort of the funding, project-based funding. Earmarking funds for projects, rather.
Yeah, that's a big can of worms there too.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
But, no, that's okay. I mean, I think that may be something that needs to be kind of thought through at the board foundation level first before we perhaps dig further into that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, board is meeting on that tomorrow, actually. So
okay, great.
We should be making some progression on this hopefully this week.
Do you think we would have enough progress on it to be able to have a session on funding at Collab Summit with what we know now, or what we will know by then?
To be honest, I'm not sure that I can answer that this week. Might have a better answer for that next week.
Yeah, and I think we can take the action to tomorrow when we have the board discussion, we can say this was a request. What do we think, right? Because I think it'll really come down to how much progress is made or not.
So I'm wondering about reaching out to the Collab Summit friends and seeing if we could get, a block of time, and then we can just sort of create our own agenda within that block and address, a variety of these things that we'd like to go through.
I think that makes sense.
2 to 3 hours or something.
The only thing I think that we'd want to have in advance is, if it's purely a working session where it's hey, it's existing members of the CPC or, people who want to be involved, and we're going to get together and work on a working session, or is it if there are people who haven't been involved and don't necessarily want to be involved ongoing, but I want to have an update, we'd probably need to capture that so that when we ask for that session, that can be in the agenda, right?
Yeah, and along those lines, the way I was trying to position this as well is taking advantage of the community corner. So so this is kind of my vision for this whole idea. I think it would be ideal to have a 10 minutes spot on the community corner to highlight the work of the CPC. And point people to a couple of different things. Number one, Jory and I have a talk at the conference on, the CPC and the foundation and whatnot. And I'd also like to try and have maybe an open office hours at the community corner after our talk, which I think is on the second day. So I could point people to that open office hours, and we can also use that from the talk stage to say, if you have questions, you want to talk to us more, we're having open office hours, this afternoon or what have you. And then also, promote a collab summit working session that would be open to, folks. Maybe we limit any of the private sort of discussions and try to keep it as open as possible at the collab summit to get more people involved in the conference overall.
Yeah, I definitely like the idea of having those, so the intro sort of overview bit would be at the community corner.
Yeah, and they all kind of lead into each other and promote each other, and hopefully we can kind of build on something.
Just thinking as you were speaking too, is there any use to something like I'm on the CPC sticker that says "Ask me anything" or?
Oh, that'd be fun.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
That'd be another thing you could call out. Like if you see anybody with this, you can ask them. If you have CPC questions, you can do that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good idea. So, all right. Well, unless anyone has any objections or wants to discuss this further, my plan is to reach out to Eva and the team at the Collab Summit and try to kind of, execute on that idea, those succession of ideas, and see what we can do. I will try to arrange for some time at the Collab Summit as a block of time, and we can, craft an agenda. I think that maybe 3 hours would be ideal. And not be too much, but not be too little. So that's what I'll shoot for. And if anybody wants to discuss it further, let me know. Thanks.
Sounds great.
Cool. All right. So moving on, the next agenda item is pull request 389. This was opened by Brian. This relates to email addresses that new projects proposals are sent to. It's a concern for many of us that when we hit reply on those new project proposals and are discussing things that are private, that the proposer might be on the email. So the idea, if I'm capturing this, Brian, is that we would just use the operations email, and then Brian would send it along to the internal list.
That's it. There's really nothing more.
Yeah. We've got a lot of approvals on here, but I encourage folks if they want to add theirs as well. Otherwise, we should just merge this in and call it a day.
So just so that I understand the new process, it would be the application goes to operations and then Brian would take the action item to ensure that it forwards to the new projects list, sans any person for whom that would be a conflict.
Yep, that's correct. Either me or whoever is whoever's monitoring the operations alias. The idea being that if I'm on vacation or something like that, somebody else will be on there.
Can I suggest that we perhaps choose a manager at that point as well? Even if it's tentative until we, people give it the thumbs up to move forward. It seems like it might be a good point.
I think that's a good idea. I would also say then, because we also had this goal of being able to reply within a certain time frame to a project that has submitted to the new projects list. So given that we're now possibly creating, more of a gap between the CPC responding to the project's application, then whoever takes the operations at email should be responsible for acknowledging receipt of the message, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay.
Or we could just automate this part of it as well and have one emailing list that is a member that accepts the message and then just forwards it to the other few projects email list, and just ensures that the original sender does not end up as the reply to address there.
I had considered that. Actually, that's a really good point. I was thinking if there's a way to automate it. One of the reasons that I came down on this particular approach is that since the application is not a form, it's a template that people fill out, it probably makes sense for whoever's monitoring this to do a first round review just for completeness. And then if there's something which is not there that should be there, whoever's on the operations alias, whether it's me or somebody else, is able to go back to the person who submitted it and give them an opportunity to complete all the fields before it gets passed on to the new projects list.
That makes
Sure,
sense.
that's entirely valid as well.
Yeah. I like automation, but I think what you're describing here, Brian, makes sense.
I mean, I guess one of the other options would be to set up a form. If we wanted to go that route.
Yeah, you could automate it through that and basically, let people know that they didn't fill something out, and then just have that form send an email.
It sounds like this is a plan that we can fall back to in case the current plan of having human in the loop ends up being problematic in some way.
Yep, I agree.
So just chiming in here, having gone through that process, it is not uncommon for a number of people working on this application document for a number of days. And so sure, you can then stick it into a form. I agree. But that's also something you might want to consider.
Yeah, good point. So let's just, proceed as we are currently proceeding with this, PR and the thought that the person responding to operations will check the form and acknowledge receipt and then forward it along, and ideally a manager would be chosen at that point as well. We'll see how we can optimize later. Cool. So this is all sorts of approved as well. So we'll merge that puppy in soon after this call if nobody beats me to it. Great. So moving on, the next agenda item is to review the community committee's charter update, the Node.js Community Committee. Tierney opened this up a week ago, and I was, reviewed this as a ComCom member, but I encourage folks to take a look at this, make sure there's nothing that stands out. I don't know how we are capturing approval for this. Michael, how do we do this for the TSC? Do you recall? Sorry, did I lose Michael Dawson? You're muted if you're talking, Michael.
Sorry, I
Maybe.
couldn't find the window. Yeah, I think last time we just did something like what we had there. We opened an issue saying here it is over here, and if people could +1 in the issue itself, that's what I did. I think we can then just, once it's been open for a certain amount of time and we think we have enough +1s, although there's no fixed number, we should be able to then say go ahead.
Okay.
So I would say, like, you know, how long do we think we need? The other thing too is we did pass it by we should probably just you know, give an FYI to the board since they approved the last charter, and this is a change to that. So
Yeah, I believe that's part of the flow. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tierney, is expected flow on this.
I think for this specific update, yes, but in the future it shouldn't be.
no.
Correct.
So yeah, so I'm happy to take the action to send an FYI to say, hey, if you have any concerns, let us know. And then we could just pick otherwise we'll land it within a week or 2 weeks or some reasonable amount of time.
Or you had something?
Well, and just to point out that per our bylaws, the board doesn't have to approve these. So we don't need to wait on board approval or anything. That was something Brian and I looked into on a different question a few weeks ago.
Gotcha. Yeah. So just the reason that the ComCom was assuming that we would is because it specifically says it's chartered by the board of a foundation that I guess no longer exists. So we just wanted to make absolutely sure that we weren't like subverting that board charter. So yeah, if it doesn't need that, and if y'all assert that, that's fine. You know, happy to not have the additional layers of work, but yeah.
I mean, I think we did this with the TSC one just as a one-time transition. Yeah. But I think it needs to be, it can be as soft as here's an FYI, unless we hear otherwise, it's good, right?
Right. Yeah, Michael, I was going to say, like, this should just be, in my opinion, just an FYI. I mean, if somebody raises a major issue, I mean, obviously we'll listen to them, but I think this is just an FYI. It's not looking for approval. No, it's not like we're not going to have a vote or anything like that. It's just purely the FYI. Let us know if there's any concerns. Otherwise, it'll land and, you know, and we should choose, I think for this issue, we should basically say, you know, add your +1s or your objections or discussion there. Otherwise, you know, it can land, and we should just choose like a week from now, 2 weeks from now, whatever we think gives people enough time to review and see if they're okay.
Great. All right, sounds good to me.
Should we choose that time? Like, what do people think is, I think is it 14 days that we have in the governance changes?
It is.
Okay, so maybe that would be my initial starting point, just start with that.
I think that sounds good. I mean, let's just keep 14 days is I have remembered, so.
Yeah, and that's good too. The ComCom doesn't meet this Thursday, it does meet the following Thursday, which I think, you know, Tierney opened this up 7 days ago, so that should all line up. So, all right,
theoretically, great. Yeah. I think that meeting will be just before the 2 weeks.
Okay. Oh yeah, that looks like it would, huh?
That's okay though. It does, yeah. It's whatever works for y'all is perfect.
Yeah, I don't think there's any major rush anyway, right?
Yep.
So.
Yeah. All right, cool. If anyone wants to drop that little bit of context into the issue, that could be helpful.
Sure.
Excellent. Thank you. So the next agenda item is to move the COC proposal to stage 3. This is pull request 379. The AMP team is working through some, you know, their incubation and different aspects. And, you know, one of the things that they're working on is their code of conduct, you know, or as I guess in terms of how theirs aligns with the foundations and such. I don't believe that Nina's on the call, if that's how you say her name, but their name.
Nina, but I'm here, Toby's here, so I can help answer questions around this if you want.
Great, yeah, I don't know, I mean, this seems like, I first of all appreciate the thoughtful comments here and questions and suggestions and all that. And thank you, Michael, for chiming in on some areas. This seems like it could be a larger conversation, but maybe Toby, you can give us some context and we can see what we want to do.
Yeah, I agree. We have a meeting with the incubation working group later today, so I can bring that up at that point. But I do agree that if it doesn't feel like this conversation should block moving that PR, and I think it should be moved in its own issue. I think it's an important conversation to have, but like it shouldn't block that. I don't think it should block that PR.
Yeah, I guess it comes down to, do we want to make this the official process and then change it afterwards, or are some of the comments substantive enough that we think it's better to wait to put it into place till we like fully understand and address them?
So I cannot answer that question now. I'm happy to bring it up later today in our call and bring it back to the foundation on the issue.
That sounds good. And like maybe even ask if like setting up a meeting where we could have a real-time discussion would make sense.
Okay, I'm happy to do that too.
Because I think there's still like, we have a lot of context of what we've discussed. And just from some of the questions, I think we haven't communicated all that context in the document, and the discussion might help us close some of that more quickly.
Okay. I'll get Nana to organize a call. Who on your side would want to be on that call?
I would volunteer.
Yeah, I would as well.
Yeah, I would.
I'd be happy to help as well.
All right. Can you actually put your names down in the thing?
Okay.
That was fast.
Tierney, Jory, Michael, and myself. Yep.
Okay.
Giuseppe,
cool.
Tierney,
That works.
Jory,
Wonderful.
Michael. Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it. Great. All right. Well, I look forward to that conversation. So we will move along and update that issue or that pull request as we work through this and discuss it again soon. Cool. So next agenda item is administering project applications. This is around like process for monitoring basic SLA and also just generally staying on top of the project applications. We had decided to open up a private and a public repo to manage onboarding and can automate some things there. We are unable to open a private repo yet. I don't know if there's any update on that, Brian, in terms of the foundation or this org.
So not yet. We're still waiting to hear back from GitHub on the application. They've acknowledged receipt, but it does take a little while for the developer team to review and approve application.
Great. All right. So yeah, I mean, I think we can keep this open until we get that sorted out. And thank you, Jory, for moving tickets over today. Like I said, I think the label will pull them into our agenda. And then once we feel like we've got, process shaping up around onboarding and applications, then we can probably close this issue, I'm thinking. So unless anyone wants to discuss that any further, we'll move on. I see that there are already notes happening in responsible security disclosures.
Right. I was just updating that there is a PR open in the package maintenance repo. And the discussion there is the discussion in the issue we've opened is that will be the basis for what we do for the OpenJS recommendations. So we're basically waiting for that first PR to go through the review, comment, consensus building. Once that's in place, then, Marcin will look at using it to do something that would be like specific recommendations for the OpenJS Foundation project members.
Okay, great. And that's in package maintenance or security working group?
No, it's in the Node.js package maintenance repo, the PR.
Okay.
I can probably dig that up while we talk.
Okay. All right, so we'll continue to sit tight on that one and see how that shapes up, and then we can have our conversation.
Yeah, and if people have thoughts on what the guidance should look like for the OpenJS Foundation, it actually should be consistent with what we're telling other projects. So feel free to get in there and comment and contribute as well along the way.
Great. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, maybe even dropping the PR into the issue 326 for people to.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'll do that. I think it will likely already be referenced, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I'm looking right now. That's the security working group.
It may be indirect if you. Okay. PR impact. Okay, I'm adding it to the issue now.
Excellent. Thank you. Cool. Yeah, so if people can take a look at that, that'd be great. And we can discuss it further as it takes shape. The next issue, the next item on the agenda is issue 324. This is mailing lists for projects. I know that I think that we briefly talked about this yesterday, but I always forget where we land on exactly what we're doing here and what the scope is of this issue in particular. So, Emily, you, Brian?
Yeah, it's me. So I think I can maybe help on this one. So this was a general, just generally available information that if a project needs a mailing list on the openjsf.org domain, that I am certainly happy to set that up. Not a problem at all. And one of the other discussions that Jory and I have been having is on a much broader sense, where should we be having, or where should be storing and maintaining the lists of people who should be on, for example, maintainer mailing lists. So that's a separate discussion. It's one that branched off of this one. Don't know that we fully have an answer on this yet, but I think we might be getting close. The main thing here really is just as a general call to action for any projects that need mailing lists, please reach out to me and I'm happy to set one up for you.
And so would that be like mailing list at openjsf.org sort of mailing list?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Wasn't it lists.openjsf.org?
Lists.openjsf.org, that's correct. Yep, thank you.
Okay. All right, so do we think that, go ahead, Brian.
I was going to say separately, if we're not looking for mailing lists, if we're just looking for an alias, like for example, whatever project -maintainers at openjsf.org, I can set that up as well. That's not actually a mailing list, that's just an alias. But that is also something we can set up too if we're just looking for a single email to be able to reach all the maintainers on a project. The dependency there is I need for the projects to tell me who their maintainers are and to keep those lists up to date. So this is one of the things that Jory and I were talking about. If there's a central way to track this, and likely having the project repos in place, that will certainly help.
But also having the list on list.openjsf.org works. And I mean, if you really want to, you can set up the aliases to just forward to list.openjsf.org address, and then you can offload the maintenance of having those maintainer addresses to the projects themselves.
That's true. Yep, it's a good point.
Is this piece in that, I can't remember, in the document, which was like the services, the base services offered by the foundation to projects?
Mm-hmm. Should be.
Okay, because
if it isn't, then it needs to be added, because this is, I mean, this is an easy thing.
Because it just seems like, yeah, it's one of the standard things. So, and that is interesting. So basically it can be delegated to the project to maintain the list. Because I know, like, for example, in the Node project, we currently maintain those in our own, we have a list of aliases we push, and they're managed through GitHub.
Mm-hmm.
versus having to say, ask to remove or add people, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I think it depends largely what infrastructure is being used. If we're using the groups.io infrastructure, I can create a mailing list and then delegate moderation responsibilities to somebody in the project. So then if it's, for example, if it's a maintainers list, that might be an invitation only list. In case there's discussions maintainers need to have amongst themselves. But at the same time, the maintainer, somebody on the list probably would want to maintain it themselves, determine who should be on it. And I can absolutely delegate that. That's not a problem at all.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
Great. It seems like we can close this issue then. Anybody have objection to that?
I'd like that we make sure that it's mentioned in the documentation where the discussion was earlier saying that it ought to be at least mentioned.
That's PR number 396 is the infrastructure menu of services. So I can really super quickly jump over and confirm under mailing lists.
While you're confirming, Jory, it is referenced at the bottom of the README under getting help.
Yeah, line 45 in the PR as well.
Yeah. Yep. So I think we're good to close it.
Great. I will just drop a link to the PR and close it. Great. All right, excellent. Moving on. Oh, I just commented. I will now close. Let's see. Where's my tab? The next agenda item is add impact and consumers of the project to new project templates. This morning I fixed the conflicts and pinged Miles. He added his +1. He said it looks good enough and we can iterate on it later if need be. And so I think he was sort of the last one we were looking to get, it looks good to me approval from the previous comments. So I think we're good to merge this unless anyone has any outstanding objections or concerns. All right, pushing the button. Great, all sorts of progress. All right, excellent. So it is 12:45. We typically want to save a little bit of time for a private session to go through any project application discussions. Do we want to jump into that now or look at the post-bootstrap work board, which I'm pulling up right now to see if there's anything that stands out to me? Looking at the board, the admin policy docs I still am almost done with, and that's in progress. Review foundation infrastructure and rethink how we manage it is in progress, which I think will remain for now until we make further progress on infrastructure conversations. And then there are the 3 items that are waiting on the board/foundation: project-directed funding, update move JSF CLA bots, and define and document style guide. I know we've had some progress on some of those things. Is there any sort of update, or should we be closing anything?
Not quite ready to close yet. Document and style guide, or documenting the trademark guidelines and the style guide is something I have not been able to get to, but we'll get to here hopefully very shortly.
Thank you.
One of the other things that may be useful as well, because this has been a question that I've seen asked a few times, not directly related to style, but potentially impacting it. There have been some questions about a standard header or footer for projects to use on their website. And we are just about at the point now where we have the proper documents approved, where we'll have a central privacy policy in terms of use for openjsf.org. And the idea is these are things that projects would be able to incorporate and adopt on their own websites. And one of the pieces which will come after this, we've been in discussion with legal about getting the text all correct, is having a standard footer that has links to these documents, has the appropriate notices and that sort of thing. So just so that everybody knows, this is on its way. We've been working on this, getting it all put together so that it's easy for projects to pick up and drop in place as need be. So we're getting close on it. Just have to get a few more documents approved.
So I'll want to just point out that not all projects have a website. And so, we'll need to, or the board will need to provide direction for projects that are, that do not have websites unless it wants to, on its own, create a website and all that for the project.
Is it because there's some requirement to display these even if you don't have a website?
I don't know of any requirement.
So, yeah, I think I don't know that I'm qualified to answer this question. So it's a question that we can ask. We do still need to go back to legal with this about how would we modify it, for example, for a project that just uses its GitHub repo as its homepage. So there may be some notices that we should put there, probably things related to trademark. And at the same time, it would be a good idea as well to have the various projects in the foundation and acknowledge that, they're OpenJSF projects. Here's a link back to the web page, that sort of thing.
All right.
I have a related thought that came to mind early, actually, in this discussion, following up from what Joy said, that not all projects have a website. Not all projects also have a blog or any other place where to post basically news, like we're doing a major update or this has just come out. And has there been any discussion that I don't at least recall about OpenJSF itself providing something like a blog or something like a feed for projects to basically be able to use as a channel to communicate that, hi, we did a big thing, isn't it cool?
I love that idea.
This is Robin. Yeah, we would love to have all of our projects blog on our blog. As we know, the more content, the higher the readership. So would encourage you to work with Rachel and me if you're interested in blogging about, yeah.
And I think Rachel has been working on like the plan for doing that with the project. So I don't think it's a new concept.
Correct. Yeah, we've got, we do have a draft plan on how we kind of scale some of those marketing programs for the projects. And if there are specific questions around how that works, things haven't been 100% solidified yet, but I'm working with Robin to get those done. But in the meantime, if there are things that are interesting that are happening within your projects, please reach out because, I'm happy to assist and, amplify all of the great things that are going on.
One of the other things too that we discussed as part of the marketing plan, and Emily, this may be a lightweight answer to your question. We have the OpenJSF Twitter handle, as well as the various other social media properties. And one of the things which is helpful on our end is when projects do have this news, to give us a heads up so that Rachel can schedule up retweets and and amplify the news that comes out of the projects as, you know, as presented through their social channels. So it's a much lighter weight answer to your question than actually having a project specific blog, but it would be another way to get the news out.
Are any of the instructions on tapping that available anywhere?
I was just going to add that one really quick way to get that support and lift, be it through Twitter or a blog or something like that, is to jump in the PR-marketing channel in Slack and ping Rachel, or just, you know, ping at here there, so that, but I mean, usually Rachel's like super lightning fast at retweets and stuff like that.
And Emily, I can add this to the README as well under getting help. We do have help with press and media, but this is mainly about guidance on inbound media requests. And we can definitely add something there about, you know, where to go if you have outbound news that you want to share.
I think also, and Rachel can correct me if I'm wrong, but the full answer is she's working on something which will provide more of that documentation. It's just not quite ready yet, right?
Correct.
So hopefully within the next, I don't know how long, but within some period of time, there will be a more comprehensive sort of plan outline of how to, what's kind of like the infra services plan, something that's like, here's the base services you can take advantage of, and here's how you do it.
Correct.
Cool.
Great. All right, so we are 8 minutes till top of the hour. Should we call it a day on the public session and jump into private?
Yes.
Any objections? Okay, great. Thanks everyone for joining. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I have 388 that I want to discuss in the private session.
Okay. All right, great. So, yeah, of course. Let's end the live stream. Thanks, folks, for tuning in. See you next week.